What's up guys, my name is Stoody and I'd like to welcome you back to another video. In today's video, this is episode 35 of Stoody Rants. Now, it's been a while since I've done a rant. I feel it's been at least a few months. And I haven't done very many rants yet this year. This is maybe the third or fourth rant at most that I've done this year, which is pretty good. So it means things are going pretty good. But I feel like this rant is well overdue. That's for certain. So basically, throughout this week, people have let me know about something Andrew Dillon said. And people said, sure, this is a rant. Surely you got to do a rant. Now, at first, I'm like, I'm not going to do a rant over one thing he said. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I should definitely do a rant. Because there's a lot of bullshit that I have to rant about throughout the year. So let's get started. Now, let's just start off with what full-on sparked this rant. So basically, Andrew Dillon, right? Surely he's got to be taking the piss when he said this. But basically he said that the umpiring is the best it has ever been. You are so full of fucking shit, mate. You're a dead set fucking wanker. I'm telling you that right now. The umpiring is the worst it has ever been. And there's many reasons why. Obviously, match fixing the AFL. We all know match fixing is a big part of AFL. I mean, if you can't see that, then you are a complete retard and you need to be put in the mental institution. Or you're just simply in denial and you do not want to admit that the AFL is rigged. Now, to the dickheads who are saying, oh, how's the AFL rigged and all this other shit, I'm going to explain that in this video. I'm going to explain how they rig it, what they do, and all that sort of shit, even though I've proven it so many fucking times and I've mentioned it so many fucking times how they do it. I'm going to say it in this video, but basically, we're going to go back onto Andrew Dillon's comment about the umpires now. So basically, the umpiring is as shit as it's ever been, mainly because, number one, they don't know the fucking rules. How the fuck can you know the rules when you change the rules all the fucking time? Plus, they make the rules in a way that's confusing as fuck, like the hole in the ball rule, hands in the back rule, that sort of shit. Like, they make it confusing as fuck so they can rig matches, which we're going to get into. So basically, they feel the need to have 4 field umpires now, because apparently 3 isn't enough, and they used to only have like 2 field umpires back in the day. They feel the need to have a goal review system that they can't fucking use properly, and they use that to rig matches big time as well. There's certain angles with the goal review that you can't see, and half the time the ball's fucking blurry when they're trying to figure out if someone touched the ball or not. You've got goal umpires using a review for obvious goals or behinds, like obvious decisions. They feel the need to go to the goal review for some bullshit reason. Not only that, the umpires can't even bounce the fucking ball anymore. Like, you see them fucking up the bounces so often, and it's at a point where they don't even allow the umpires to bounce the ball if they fuck it up the first time, or if there is a 666 fucking violation or some shit, or if it's just a normal ball up from a tackle or whatever. They're not allowed to bounce anymore, they have to throw it up. It's fucking retarded. And all of that because the umpires' skill levels have gone down. Even the football players' skill levels have gone down. They're better athletes, that's for sure, but they're terrible skill. Their skills are a lot worse. They're not as good as footballers, they're better as athletes. Now here's the thing, if you're going to make people pay money to watch a product, whether it's on KO or they attend the game, those people who are paying their hard-earned cash to watch your product should know what they're getting. Like, for example, when you watch the WWE, you know that that's all scripted, right? But that's the way the AFL is. It is scripted. It's not quite as scripted as the WWE. Like, not everyone is on board. Like, for example, the WWE wrestlers know which wrestler's going to win. But the AFL teams, they don't know. They're both trying to win. But it is the umpires who have been given the job to try and help a particular team win to benefit the AFL. It's a thing called match manipulation. You know, it can also be called match fixing, rigging matches, that sort of shit. But what they do is they manipulate matches to help a certain team win, to have a certain result happen. It all started in the 2016 finals series where they manipulated every Western Bulldogs finals game to help the Western Bulldogs win. Look carefully at all the non-calls and all the calls that go the Bulldogs' way. it's just so blatantly obvious that the Bulldogs, they were chosen to win that flag. And the reason why they had the Bulldogs win that flag is for the money. A Western Bulldogs supporter came out and proved that final series was rigged. They completely dissected every single game of the final series and proved that the Western Bulldogs were protected by the umpires. The umpires manipulated every single match. Plenty of moments in the game that was manipulated to go the Bulldogs' way to help the Bulldogs win games. You know, they didn't win any games by decent margins. And if you go back and watch those games, you can clearly see that they were not the better team. They just had all the decisions go their way. And to this day, the free kick counts for like all 4 of the Western Bulldogs finals games are like the 4 most lopsided free kick counts in finals history. That's how fucked it was. That's when I knew the AFL was rigged. You know, I was watching it on TV myself and I knew it was rigged then. That's when I figured it out. But then when I started seeing this video that this guy was posting and shit that other people were posting at around about that time, proving that the AFL was rigged, that's when I knew 100% AFL is rigged. But the problem is those people ended up taking their videos down and shit. I wish I downloaded copies of all those videos because I'd re-upload them to this channel and I'd make you all look fucking dumb. Really, really dumb. But the thing is, the AFL community don't want to listen. They just want to put a blind eye to the match fixing. They want to pretend it never happened when it does happen, and we need to fucking stop it. You know, players, for example, they're not involved in the match fixing and their fucking dreams are being shattered because of the match fixing. Think about some of the Sydney players trying their best to win the flag, but they have that taken away from them due to match fixing. Think about the GWS players in that prelim trying to get themselves into the grand final. They would have been in the grand final if it wasn't for the match fixing. Their grand final dreams completely shattered because of match fixing. If you guys remember the free kick Hawthorn movement from 2013 to 2015, you know, Gillon McLachlan took over as CEO in 2014. He's the guy that started the match fixing, all right? So this free kick Hawthorn thing, you know, no one really noticed like match fixing or anything shady going on. I didn't notice it during that era, at least not until the 2016 final series. But I think if I was to rewatch that period of time, I think we'll notice match fixing, especially in Hawthorn games. I think they wanted a three-peat to happen right there. And then once they no longer needed Hawthorn, they decided to just rob them the 2016 semi-final against the Western Bulldogs, of course. Now, the reason why rules such as holding the ball, hands in the back and all that is so confusing, so vague, you know, also the deliberate rush behinds, the deliberate out of bounds, that sort of thing. The reason why it's so inconsistent, so confusing, it's so they can easily manipulate it to help certain teams win. One shithouse decision can cause a massive momentum swing in games. So when people complain about, oh, how can this game be rigged? It was a 60-point margin. Well, guess what, dickhead? It was only one goal at this point in time in the third quarter, and that bullshit decision cost that team a goal, and then 2 minutes later, this complete bullshit decision cost them another goal, completely changes the momentum of games. When those two bullshit decisions don't happen, most likely the game goes a different way. According to the rule book, you're allowed to put your hands in the back, but as long as you don't push. There's times where players push, right? And then they take the mark, but it still doesn't count as pushing the back. But there's other times where teams, they just put their hands in the back, don't push, they take a mark from it, but then they still give away a free kick. They fucking confuse the fuck out of people, but I know that's what's in the rule book. You're allowed to put your hands in the back, but you're not allowed to push. But the AFL don't give a shit about that, neither do the umpires. Just whatever favours them on that particular day is what decision is going to be made. Same with holding the ball. I mean, you've got players that are trying to manipulate some of these rules as well. Jack Ginnivan, Nick Watson, for example, fucking ducking into tackles. Then you got Nick Larkey, who constantly fucking dives to draw those push in the back free kicks. And then you've got suspensions. There seems to be special rules for certain players slash teams A player can do something that's the same as another player, but one player gets a week suspension, the other doesn't. Like, for example, right? I think it was Boyd or some shit who dog-shotted Ryan Mansell. He somehow got off for that. Whereas Mansell just last year, something that probably wasn't even as bad, got 2 weeks. All because Aisha's helmet fell off. And all because he plays for Richmond and they were doing it to rob Richmond. For example, Jack Ginnivan's allowed to be racist as fuck while he's on the field back in 2022. Collingwood versus Richmond, he was doing that all fucking game long. Ryan Mansell gave him an elbow to the fucking head to tell him to stop being a racist cunt. Mansell gets suspended for a week for that. The AFL don't do shit about Ginnivan. The club, Collingwood, actually suspend Ginnivan themselves, but they refuse to make it public. They put him down as illness, right? When in reality, he was suspended for being a racist cunt. Yeah, the AFL want to suspend Jeremy Finlayson and Powell for like fucking 5 weeks because they called someone a faggot on field. The word faggot is nowhere near as bad as the N-word, for example. Now, how the fuck can Ginnivan not get suspended from the AFL for being racist, but the AFL want to suspend Jeremy Finlayson for 5 weeks for calling someone a faggot? Did Ginnivan's words somehow not pick up on the umpire's mic? Surely they did. As you all know, Ginnivan is a protected species by the AFL. I also want to make mention that rule changes to the AFL have been brought in to stop certain teams from dominating. Yes, that's correct. The stand rule was brought in to stop Richmond from dominating. And the person who was actually in charge of rule changes at the time was some guy named Hocking or some shit, who was a Geelong guy. And he was actually changing rules to fuck over Richmond, but to benefit Geelong. Like, for example, 666 rule. Richmond were not a strong clearance team. But before the 666 rule, you could have 8-9 defenders, which is what Richmond used to do to counter that. Richmond were very good at scoring from defense, from going coast to coast, that sort of thing. Their clearance game wasn't that strong. But what they did is that they brought in the 666 rule to make clearances a whole lot more important, which fucked over Richmond. I mean, there's many more ways that the AFL manipulate matches of games, You've got the goal review system, right? Now, let's go back to 2022, where Tom Lynch kicked a goal late in the Richmond versus Brisbane game to seal the game, right? It was a clear goal, and there was a camera angle that showed that. The camera angle was like on the right-hand side of the field, and it showed from that angle that the ball clearly went through for a goal. So what happened, right, is that the AFL did not show a camera angle that 100% proved that went through that goal. They would have had it, but obviously they didn't show it on TV so they could manipulate it into calling it a behind. The goal umpire originally called it a goal, and even with their shitty, fucked up camera angles that they were showing on TV, there was no conclusive evidence at worst for Tom Lynch. It was either a goal or no conclusive evidence, and when there's no conclusive evidence, it goes to umpire's call, which is a goal. And there was no way they could have overturned that decision with the camera angles they had. And they refused to use the camera angle on the right-hand side because that fucking clearly showed it was a goal. So they did that to manipulate the result to that game to help Brisbane advance through the finals. You guys remember the Adelaide versus Sydney robbery from last year. But the thing is, because it's not a team that people were jealous of, everyone went and lost their minds. But because everyone's jealous of Richmond, people didn't give a shit. Also, the dissent rule, another way they can manipulate games. I mean, they don't have to put on the umpires' mics on the fucking TV. So they can just randomly say, oh, this player committed dissent, let's give them a 50. And I'm sure there's different rules to it for certain players. I'm sure certain teams get away with it more than other teams do. And for some shit like the stand rule, if a player takes one step backwards even, they give it 50. And they don't do it every single time either. Like, I see players take a step every now and then and not get given 50. But every now and then, they give 50 to certain teams. And I reckon they manipulate that as well. And they only give 50 when it suits the AFL's agenda. When it comes to some acts on the AFL football field, Fucking 50 metres is just way too big of a penalty to pay for something so fucking minor. It is disgusting. And also there's times where they give teams a 70 metre penalty instead of a 50, and then maybe teams get a 30 metre penalty instead of a 50. They fuck around with it all the time. It's fucked. It really is fucked. The AFL is all about money. It is not a legitimate sport anymore. They'll fuck teams over if it means the AFL will earn more money. The reason Richmond are getting robbed at the moment is because they don't need Richmond's money at the moment. Richmond bringing a shitload of money regardless, you know. The Richmond Hawthorn game, Dusty, he fucking brought in 90,000 fans. That would have made the AFL fucking drooling out of their mouths. And Richmond have been getting robbed all year. But Richmond always draw a big crowd because they have a big supporter base. And it would be the same with Collingwood and all that. Like if Collingwood were down as well, they're still going to get the AFL plenty of money. What they're doing right now is they're trying to grow the game up in Queensland because they want, you know, the money from there. And they always want to make sure a New South Wales team is doing good as well, I'd say. Lucky for the AFL, they probably don't really need to protect the New South Wales teams at the moment because they are pretty good teams anyway. But as for Brisbane and Gold Coast, they're average teams. But the AFL need to protect those teams if they're going to make the 8 because they're not top 8 caliber teams without the AFL's help. There's always bullshit deals going on under the table as well that the AFL are heavily involved in. Like, for example, the Damien Hardwick deal. It's pretty obvious that the AFL had something to do with that. They are obviously paying Dimmer a shitload of money to dog Richmond and to go to the Gold Coast. And it's probably a similar thing happening, whether it's between Dimmer and Dusty or the AFL, Dimmer and Dusty. There's obviously some bullshit probably going on there. And it's probably going on with Daniel Rioli and other players as well. Probably other players of other clubs. The AFL are probably going to help fucking certain teams fuck over certain teams. Like, they're going to help Damien Hardwick fuck over Richmond. Because Damien Hardwick, he only cares about himself the way I see it. If he steals Dusty, if he steals anyone from our team this off-season, I've lost all respect for him. You know, I defended him when he originally left Richmond and then went to Gold Coast. I was like, oh, he won us 3 premierships. So I sort of defended him, even though it was sort of a dog act. It's like, is he a dog or not? But what's a real dog act is to dump the team that respected you so much, you know, fans that respected you so much, loved you so much, then just go on to another team the next year, right? You know, that's fucked up enough. But then to go ahead and start stealing our players, yeah, if you're going to do that, you can go and fuck yourself, mate. You're no longer a Richmond legend if you do that, Dimmer. And I will burn the Dynasties shirt that I have if you go ahead and start stealing our players. One last thing I want to talk about is the Brownlow. You know, the Brownlow's rigged for money reasons. It's all about the money. If you've noticed the last, say, 7 or 8 years, a shitload of players who have won the Brownlow did not deserve it. The only players since the 2015 Brownlow that I can think of that actually deserved it when they won it was Dustin Martin in 2017 and Nat Fyfe in 2019. They're the only 2 players that actually deserved it. Every other player did not deserve it. Like, for example, Patrick Dangerfield in 2016 did not deserve it. 2018, Tom Mitchell did not deserve it. And then it gets really fucked after that. 2020, Lachie Neale. Are you joking me? 2021, Ollie Wines. They just pulled that one out of their ass. Like, that one was pulled out of their ass. And then the next year, fucking Patrick Cripps, dog shots, Archie, and still wins the fucking Brownlow. It is fucking disgraceful. Like, you could tell at that moment that he'd won the Brownlow. Like, that was the AFL's plan, was to get him to win the Brownlow. It's all about growing the game for certain teams as well. And then Neil somehow wins it again in just last year. And he got a 3-vote game for a game he played shithouse in. And that was the difference. That's what got him the win in the end. But in round 6, you knew Lachie Neale had the Brownlow because they obviously had to pull out a bullshit 3-vote game out of their asses to give him the win. I highly doubt that was the original voting. They obviously tamper with the votes after the season is finished to end up with the Brownlow winner that they want. And this year, I reckon they're going to gift Cripps another Brownlow, even though Cripps is clearly not the best player in the league. Clearly does not deserve the fucking Brownlow. You know, But he's going to win it again because, it's the AFL and the AFL is rigged. I know exactly what the AFL is going to do. They are so fucking predictable with their match fixing these days. It is unbelievable. Cripps will win the Brownlow, but he won't deserve it, obviously. The players that do deserve it, I think Marcus Bontempelli, Isaac Heaney, I think would be the two front runners in reality. And then the dark horses, I guess you've got Zach Merritt, Caleb Sarong, maybe Nick Dacos. But there's still a little bit to go for the season, so that could change. But somehow Patrick Cripps will fucking dominate. He'll get 3 vote games that he was not even close to best on ground. He'll be the 10th best on ground for many games and get 3 fucking votes. That's how fucked the AFL is, and it's all about money. That's what it's all about. So Marcus Bontempelli, because he's not a complete fucking sellout, because he's not a fuckhead like blokes like Lachie Neale and Patrick Cripps are, he'll never win a Brownlow for that reason. Nick Dacos will never win a Brownlow. No matter how much those two dominate, it'll always be a fuckwit that wins the Brownlow every year because the AFL is full of fuckwits. AFL is shithouse, and I also mentioned on my match review recently that the AFL owe me well over $5,000 because of, they've stolen money off of me. You're advertising me a product, but I'm not actually getting that product, You're telling me that I'm watching an actual game of football when I'm watching a rigged game of football. So, for those of you who didn't see that video, here's what the AFL owe me, alright? $3,000 for the Richmond versus Gold Coast game back in 2022. That includes tickets and accommodation. That's what it ended up costing all up to get to the Gold Coast. 2024, the opening round, Richmond versus Gold Coast. It cost $405 for those tickets. I didn't have to do accommodation and all that shit this time. I was only in charge of the tickets. So that's $404. And then we have the rest of this season, the Richmond Fremantle game. That cost $150. And then the Richmond Carlton game, just gone by, that cost around $100. And then you've got KO, and that's 5 years worth of KO as well. And I believe that added up to $2,100. So that brought me up to well over $5,000, I think close to $6,000. And then I've just gone and bought tickets to Richmond versus Collingwood. Now, I bought 3 tickets to Richmond versus Collingwood because my mate Nick is coming. Let's chat with Nick, and I'm assuming Richmond will be robbed in that game, so you could basically add that up. And then I paid another $130 for Richmond versus GWS because I've got good seats for that game, so that cost more. It cost more for 2 tickets for that game than it did for 3 tickets of the Richmond Collingwood game because I've got, level 4 seats, sort of 20th row back, because that was the best I was able to get. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that would bring it up to $6,000 that I'm owed. And yeah. So Andrew Dillon, I want my fucking money, mate. And if you don't give me my money, we're going to court. And I will sue you for the money that I am owed. And so should everyone else. Everyone else, since 2016, the AFL has been rigged. So whatever you have paid for since 2016, you have been scammed. So you can sue the AFL for what they owe you. So there's probably people out there that are owed $100,000, because I've only been to 4 games where Richmond got robbed in that time. So I'm sure there's people that have been to 30 in the last, how many years? 8, 9 years. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for this rant. I hope you guys have enjoyed this rant. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment like this. Be sure to become a channel member. Just click the join button next to my name. Also, be sure to subscribe to my premium member, Sean Ducks. Link to his channel is in the description. Also, be sure to subscribe to my other YouTube channels. Be sure to subscribe to my second YouTube channel, Stoody Archives. Also, be sure to subscribe to my backup channel, Stoody TV. Links to both of those will be in the description. Also, be sure to join my Discord server, Discord Australian Sports Community. Link to that is in the description. Also, be sure to follow me on my other social media accounts. I have Instagram, I have Twitter, and I also have TikTok. The username for all of those is StoodyYT. Links to all those will also be in the description. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next video.